Alright, so let's start building our application using MongoDB this time. Before that, way ahead in the series, we used in-memory slice or in-memory data structure to demonstrate the post, put, delete, get methods of the Echo framework. But this time, we are going to implement the same methods, but using MongoDB, where the data will be persisted and fetched from. Alright. Now, I've gone ahead and created a folder called Tronics Corp. Okay, and these are the steps that I just executed. I initiated the Git repo. I set up the Go module here using go mod init command. All right. And I went ahead and downloaded some of the packages here. So you can see that my go mod file has some of these packages here. All right. And now we'll start writing our code. All right. So let's start with main.go file. Okay. So it's gonna be package main, function main, and here we will be creating an instance of echo. So echo in this case would be this, save it, and the echo gets downloaded, but we want the one that is version 4. Okay, and just make sure that use the version 4 and not the other ones, not the old ones, because I think there's some compatibility issues with middleware and some other stuff that you will find in a very bad way later. All right, so we are going to start with post method because we need to have some data in the database to work with. We can't use get because there's no data. We can't use delete. There's no data to delete, and there's no put method that can be used because there's no data to modify. So we're going to start with post. Okay. Our endpoint is going to be called as usual products, and then there's going to be uh, create product, which is going to be our handler function. All right. Now, of course, you can have, for example, you can have API here. Okay. Or you can have V1 here. I'm not going ahead with that because to make things simpler. I mean, if you have your host name and the host name has API word in it. For example, GitHub has a URL that looks something like this. So they have api.github.com users/user ID. Okay, so they got API here. So this is the approach some people pick up, some projects, and they might also have V1 that's based on the business requirements and everything, but slash products is just fine. All right, so we'll go ahead with that. Save it this time. And now we need to create a folder. We need to create a file for products where all the handlers will go. We're not putting them here right now. Okay, so we put them in a different folder. So I'm gonna create a new folder. Okay, and I'm gonna name it handlers, and I'll tell you why later. So this is gonna be my package as well. I'm gonna create a file called products.go here. All right, and so this is gonna be package handlers. Okay, and I have my product definition right here. Okay, so I made some small changes from the product definition that we worked before. I moved away some fields that I think are unnecessary. For example, SKU ID, just to make the example more simple. Okay, and we have an omit empty tag as part of ID so that it doesn't assume the zero value. So if the ID has not been provided, uh, it's not gonna be filling in any default value. Okay, just gonna skip it entirely. So I'm just gonna save it right now, and it imported the primitive from bson here. That's fine. I'm gonna create a new folder right now. I'm gonna name it config, and inside config, I'm gonna have a file called config.go. Now that's where some of our configuration things will go. So I have some code here. Just like to copy paste, save time. So these are the properties that we want to be used, right? So port's gonna be by default 8080, all right, and host, DB host, port, DB name, chronics, collection name, products. Okay. By the way, I have to first of all give it the name package config, and let me save this as well. Okay. Coming back to the products, I okay. I think we need another folder that is for interfaces. So I'm gonna call it dbifs because it's gonna host interface for db. I'm gonna call the interface name interface file interface.go. Okay, that's gonna be package dbifs, and I'm gonna have type, and that is going to be collection API interface. Okay, and we're gonna put our method here. But before that, let's go back to the main method. All right, and here, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna have the func init. Okay, and before that, let me declare some variables. So I'm gonna have C for Mongo client. Then I'm gonna have DB for Mongo database. I'm gonna have call for Mongo.collection, and I'm gonna have config for what is it? Config dot properties. Okay, and in init, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have env, going to have clean env, and I'm going to read environments from my config object. All right, and what it's gonna return to me is come on, show up. Uh, it takes a while sometimes to. I think it is error, but let me just clarify. Env dot read config read env. Okay, that's fine. So it's an error. If I have an error at this point, I'm gonna check for it, or I can actually just have one single if statement here. If error is not equal to nil, I'm gonna log fatal f, saying that configuration cannot be read. I'm just gonna log this, and it's gonna exit at this point, all right, because it's log fatal. And then I'm gonna need one connect URI, okay, for MongoDB, and that's gonna be sprintf, and that's gonna be MongoDB slash what is it gonna be? So it's gonna be config. I think yeah. So it's gonna be percentage s slash percentage s, and it's gonna be config dot come on db host and config dot db port. All right, and now I'm gonna call. Come on, let me save this first. Okay, so I think yeah, I think the method is connect. Whew, this is bad. I think yeah, now I can work with it. So Mongo connect. All right, and I'm gonna also have a context object here. Uh, so I think it's gonna need a context object, and I'm just gonna pass context dot background. All right, and the other thing it needs is options, and so the options are gonna be was client, which is a method, and on top of that what we need is now apply URI, right? and that's gonna be my connect URI here. Okay, I'm gonna save this. Uh, I have defined these variables outside of any function because I'll be using them in our integration testing as well. Okay, because integration testing will be making use of the same variables. We'll define them here and then we'll be making use of them in our integration test because they are already getting initialized, right? So that's that. And so let's go back to now defining. So this actually returns an error. Can we handle it? So in this case, if this is not nil, right, then we do log fatal, and this is unable to connect to database, right, and this is gonna be the error right now. Okay, and yeah, what is it? Yeah, it also returns the client, and that's why we need to have it as a separate statement, okay, so that we can use it. And this time it's okay. All right, and what we need now is we need database, and that database is going to be db name. All right, and that's gonna give us our db. Okay, we already initialized it here, so there's no need of using this operator. We just have to use equal to. And now we need the collection, which is here, and we're gonna have db dot collection, and this is gonna be collection name. All right, and at this point, so we've got client db collection config, all of them initialized. All right, we can also start writing the code for, so I think it's gonna be so start, right, and the start is going to be again printf. Okay, that is going to be percentage s colon percentage s, and that's going to be cfg host and cfg port. Okay, so that's that, and we also need to take this into logger and fatal in case if it fails. And here we just want to write info that listening on, so I think they had info f, right? Let me see, info f listening on, listening, if I can just type right on percentage s, percentage s, and that's gonna be the same thing. All right, so let's just save this. We still haven't defined the handler. Okay, so we're gonna do that, but before that, because it's a post method, okay, so we need to use insert one in this case. All right, so insert one, I'm just doing this so that I can get the signature of the method and I can put it in our interface here. So I'm just gonna put this here like this. Okay, so this is one method that we are right now including as part of our interface implementation. Okay, because that's the one we are implementing right now. It did the imports, that's fine. Let's just name it. So this is collection API collection interface. Let's just comment it. Okay, in the main go, let me delete this line and let me now go back to the products. Okay, in the products, then I need to create product handler, right? So I'm gonna come here and write func, can't spell today, create, and it's products. It has to be products because we are creating multiple products. Okay, so that is going to be mm, echo context and returns error. So this is our handler signature, right? And eventually we will return something here. Okay, so let me just save this. Okay, and then JSON. Okay, so what we want to do here is we want to, come on, status created, and we just want to say something right now, created. All right, that just a message. Okay, so that imported net HTTP package as well. Let me give a comment to this method. So it is create products on MongoDB database. Right, so that's our method. Okay, uh, the main function, let me save this right now. Okay, and the create products is actually in a different package, so I'm gonna name it handlers. I'm just gonna prefix it with handlers. It imported the package and it's all good. And what is it complaining about now? So it cannot use echo context. Okay, so the context being used here is from echo, and we need v4. I think this is kind of really problematic, but now all the errors are gone. All right, so at this point, if I'm just gonna do this, okay, then it's running the server, but I think it's running on a different port, and I can't imagine why that is happening because environment default is 8080. All right, let me just go back to Insomnia and send it the request. Okay, it can't connect to the server. I think there's something that I'm missing out, maybe. Right, clean env, read env, and so fmt's printf e start actually takes config port is 8080, and that's fine because we have the default value here. And why can't we read from? Well, let me just figure this out, and I'm just gonna pause the video right now and come back. All right, I think it should be something silly, but I'll get to it. So guys, I just realized what the problem was in the previous session. So basically, when I was reading off the config, I was reading it off against the struct, but I should be reading it off against the pointer. So when I do this, I get my server running on 8080. Okay, if I go to products now, when I do this, I get 201 created because I'm creating a resource, so that's the response code that I want, and I get this message created. But although that's not what we want here is a list of IDs that belong to the products being passed here. Okay, so let's get to that. By the way, I'm gonna create this product, but it's gonna be a list of products. Okay, so let me create this as a list, and that list only has one element right now, that is just one product. Okay, what we need to do now is we need to extend our handler function here. So this handler function needs now the collection, right? It needs to work on the collection to then insert a document in the database, right? But then how do I pass it the handler? I have a handler here, right? How do I pass it the collection? Yeah, that's the question. So I have a collection struct here. I have this collection variable, and I need to pass this variable to this method here. But how do I do it? Well, I can actually accept it as an argument here, right? I can have something like this, C call.mongo.collection, right? Something like this. I can have it this way, but that's not gonna work. Okay, the reason why, because this is a handler function and the handler function is being used in our ePost method, and that handler has to have particular signature, and in our case it is the function that accepts echo context as an argument and returns an error. So that is the signature of the function that we can define as a handler to echo post method. So we can't change that. If we change that, this thing is not going to work. Okay, because the signatures are not the same. Now how do we actually still retain the signature but pass it pass this collection object to the products method? How do we do it? Well, there's a way to do that, and that's where I actually define this product handler struct. Okay, this is a simple struct. It has one field, and this field is actually a reference to our collection API from DBIFS. Okay, so our DBIFS we know is actually it implements insert one. So anything that implements this method with the same signature can be passed as uh, call here, right? So what I'll do here right now is I will make this part of, I'll make this function create products a method of product handler. Okay, and let me just comment this out. Let me give it a comment. Product handler, a product handler. All right, and now in the main function, what I'm going to do right after when I create the echo, I'm also gonna create a handler function. Okay, so that's gonna be product, not handler function, the handler struct, and I save this. Okay, what is this? So I think it is handlers, right? And what I'm going to do here is now it is complaining that there is no function like this because create products has ceased to be a function. It has become a method of this handler. So what we need to do now is we need to do create products. Just the name of the function. We don't have to call it like this. Just the name of the function. The framework will take care of calling it internally and passing it the context object. Okay. So that is good. So now what else can I do? Well, now we can just start implementing it, right? Because we have the collection reference, but we haven't yet passed it here. So this products handler has a field called call, and that is going to be call. This call. This call is our collection, which has been instantiated with some value during our init operation. Okay, so that is all good now. Now we come back to our products and we start implementing it. Okay, so first of all, let me define a products variable. Okay, and that's gonna be a slice of products. And I'm gonna actually, this is a list of products is being passed to me in my request payload. So I'm gonna read it off. Okay, and I'm gonna read the request body and I'm gonna actually decode it into my products struct. It's gonna return an error, alright, and if error is not nil, then I'm just gonna return unable to bind, and the reason is going to be this. Okay, but if it works out so far, then I have a product struct that I can now use to insert into database. Alright, but what I'm going to do is this part was specific to using the context, but now comes the Mongo part where we insert the document, we use the collection reference and all, right? And let me do that in a different function that makes our code more modular, all right? And when the code grows, things like this actually come pretty handy. This is a silly example, it's a small example, so maybe creating a separate function like this would not make sense to you. But even if, when you're starting a project, make sure that you actually create separate functions like this. Later on, it's going to be very easy for you to refactor when the code base of your application grows, right? So first of all, I'm going to need a context to be passed to it. Okay, so every time you make a network call, it's kind of a convention in Go, then make sure that you do it against some kind of context. Make sure that the function that you're calling has context as its first argument, so that when it calls some other function, you can pass this context object to it, which the other accepting function should be accepting and working on it. Okay, so that's that. I'm also gonna pass the list of products. Okay, so that's my product slice, and I'm gonna also use the collection uh, as an argument here. Okay, what I'm going to return is I'm going to actually return a list of inserted IDs, but I'm just gonna have them as the interface. Well, by the way, I told you initially in the session that I'm gonna tell you why the reason why I named this folder handler. That's because now, because we have all these functions that are going to be handlers to a particular struct. Okay, so in this case, I have a product struct, but in your application, if you have, let's say, another struct, let's say customers or users, then you could also have that in the same folder as customers.go, and that could have its own handler that you can initialize here. So that is why all your handler functions are going to be in the handlers function. Of course, you could create a separate file here called products.go in the root folder, and you could actually have your handler functions there, but then creating them in a separate handlers folder is kind of a neat practice. Okay, so what I'm going to do here right now is now I'm going to call the method that is collection dot insert one. Okay, but I need to call this against a document, right? So I'm going to insert the document. I don't have any insert one result. I'm going to pass it single document, single product, okay? Because this is for inserting one, right? So I need to actually do this in a loop. So I'm gonna run through a for loop. So there's gonna be products, okay? And let me move this here into this folder here, right? So this returns an error and it also returns this result. Okay, so before that let me do something else. Let me uh, define interface for inserted IDs. Okay, and here when I'm looping through the products, I get one product. Okay, that product doesn't have an ID. Okay, so I need to actually give it the ID attribute. Okay, and the way I do that is by new object ID. So I give it the ID and then I insert it into this MongoDB database. What I get back is my inserted ID. Okay, and I get an error if uh, no, I think I need this outside of if loop so that I can use inserted error later. Okay, and if error is not equal to nil, then we just want to log fatal, but not exactly fatal. I'm just gonna log that I think I shouldn't be logging yeah, this time I just need to, by the way, here as well, we are logging it, but we also need to return the error. All right, and here I'm just logging that I'm unable to insert. Okay, and I need to know the reason why I'm unable to do it. And so this is not gonna be error ref, actually this is gonna be error f. Is there one? Is there one by uh, error? This is silly. Log. No, this is log. Jesus. Printf. Okay, so let me just change it to printf. That's why they use paid tools. Actually, these tools sometimes take a lot of time to show up their intelligence. So here, in this case, I'm just gonna return with nil an error. Okay, but if we are fine, then what I do is I get this inserted ID, and I have this inserted ID that I get. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it into my inserted ID's slice. So I'm going to insert this ID to my inserted IDs. All right, and at this point, then I'm ready to return my inserted IDs and nil. All right, so I think I have an error here, which is fine. And at this point, then I call my create products method. Create, come on, create product. Okay, so I think this also needs to be create products. Okay, or I would say, because the names are kind of confusing, let me do this. Let me just call it insert products. Okay, so I'm just gonna call it insert products. Okay, and I'm gonna send it my context that I'll just create off the fly here. All right, I'm gonna pass it the list of products, and I'm gonna pass it our collection as well. What I get is IDs. Okay, and I get an error. If error is not equal to nil, I return with error, or I actually send this response back to the user. All right, and I think there's something wrong here. Back contest background, if I can spell. Okay, so this is all good. All right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to run this again with our gene command, which I think is in users now. Users, come on, now go bin, because I haven't set up the path. That's why it's going to be, well, what was it? All, and then I, and run main dot go. Again, this time I have a clean database that doesn't have the collection of the database. All right, so I'm just gonna run this. It's running. I'm gonna come back here and send this, and voila, I got the inserted ID. If I come back here, refresh this, I get the products that has one document. So right, so now before we go back and start writing integration tests, there are two things that we need to do. Okay, so we need to add middleware to our create products handler, as well as a common middleware that gets invoked. And we also need to validate our products. Okay, so when the request is being sent to us, we need to validate that the client is sending us right information in our products. Okay, so we don't want a number being passed as a currency, right? So we don't want that. So first of all, let's go back to a main.go file, and we're gonna add some middleware here. Okay, so e.pre, and it's gonna have middleware. Okay, middleware dot remove, I know this name, slash, but you can always look up the document. All right, and when I save this, I have the middleware, but I want one with v4. I hate to actually keep changing this. I'm kind of very cautious about it importing the wrong package right now at least. And so that's gonna remove all the trailing slash that I could have. And then I want to have another function for body limit. Okay, so body limit, and I'm just gonna give it 1 m. So that's gonna be 1 MB of body limit, upper body limit. So anything more than that will be rejected with a different error code. Okay, so that's for middleware. Now we come back to our products, and right after we bind, we want to check whether this product slice that has a list of products, each of that product has valid fields with valid eligible values, right? So for that, what we need to do, sorry, yeah, what is this? Yeah, okay. So what we need to do is we need to run through this list of product. Okay, we need to range through them, and for each product we need to actually validate it. So there's context as this validate method, right? Now if you look at the signature of it, it accepts an interface and returns an error. Okay, and we need to pass it the product validated, and it returns an error. Okay, and if error is not nil, I could have written that in the same if statement. So if this is this and if error is not nil, then I want to return error, okay, to my HTTP response, and I also want to log this this time. Yeah, so unable to validate the product, and I want to know which product it is. So I just want to probably print some useful information here, uh, and also want to give, yeah, so that's what I want to give. So the first thing is it's gonna print which product it is an error for. Okay, and the second is the error. Okay, and I'm gonna remove this line here. Okay, so that is it. But in order to call this validate method, I need to actually have a validator, a custom validator, right? So for that, let me just go back here and first of all declare a variable, a common validator that I'll be using, and that validator is called v, okay, and that is validator dot new. When I save this, I get this validator imported, but I want the one that is v9. Okay, I hate this part. Okay, anyway, so coming back to uh, defining a custom validator. So I'm going to write a custom validator. So product validator. It's going to be a struct. It's going to have a validator field, and that's going to be pointer to my validate. Okay, which is a struct. All right. I'm gonna name this. I mean, I'm gonna put some comment here just to get rid of that yellow liner. So a product validator. All right. And I'm gonna have a function. Its name is validate because that's the name that we have here, right? Validate. And its signature is also the same. So it accepts an interface, returns an error, all right? And so what I'm going to call now is I'm going to call the p validator, and I'm going to validate the struct, which itself returns me an error. So just a minute. So struct is a method. I pass it this I, which is the object that I want to validate. It returns an error and I return it back. Okay. I also comment this. So it is validate, validates a product because it's a product validator. Okay, you could have a customer validator, user validator, whatever, but that's gonna be in a different file. Okay, and we don't have that in this project. Anyway, so having said that, now we have a working code, but before that we also need to make sure that we actually assign uh, the validator to just a minute. I think what I need, so it's a function, and then you have validator, and it is going to be a product validator, right? Product validator has a field called validator, and it is going to be v that we just declared here. Okay, so that's going to return a pointer to validator, and that's what we have. It's going to return the pointer to validate, and that's what we have here. Okay, having said that, now let's save this. Our build has failed. So echo validate a validate method as pointer receiver. So maybe, how about this? It's not the same. Okay, I think what I need here is this actually. All right, now I'm gonna try some stuff up. Just one thing, that is, let me go back to where is, yeah, insomnia. All right, so I'm gonna pass INR as INRP and see if we get the error, and we do get error, right? So internal server error, and if we go back here, it says that it's unable to validate this product. Okay, and that's what I wanted, right? So our error handling is also in place, and now we can move on to start writing a unit test, integration test. I'm sorry for this. Okay, so what we do now is we come back to handlers folder and we create a new file called products underscore test.go. All right, so it's gonna be under the same package handlers. Okay, and I'm gonna write test, and this is gonna be test product. Okay, and I'm gonna have t dot, let me just save this first. Okay, and then I have t dot run, and here uh, test create product. Okay, and then I'm gonna have a function here that accepts uh, testing t. All right, so that's still a valid function. What is this? Testing dot t. All right, and I'm going to write my unit test here. Integration test. I keep saying unit test. Anyway, so I'm gonna pick up some of the code in the main.go file. And anyway, initially I told you that I have defined these variables outside of any function so that I can use them in the integration test. And actually, I take it back. When I said that I had the idea that I'll be putting a products handler in the same package as main, and then I can use that. But that's okay. These variables are also being used not only in init, but they're also being used in main, right? So that is totally fine. Are they being used? Yeah. So I think we are using a call, right? Which is a collection here. So let me copy paste all of this code here, okay? And let me go back to products taste.main, and I'm gonna have a func. I'm gonna have just paste it here. All right. So I've got this CF. I've got sorry, what CF? Okay, so I've got this init function. I've got these variables, and I also want to have a handler. So which is going to be product handler. Okay, so it's gonna be a default product handler. All right, and shoo. Okay, uh, yeah, like that. Okay, and we have this init function, and we got db and call it at this point. And what we want to do right now is we want to create a request object, and we also want to create a recorder object out of uh, sorry, what is this? This out of HTTP test packets. Okay, so I'm gonna create a request. Okay, so let me just do HTTP test, and it's gonna be new request. Okay, so this new request has method is what? Come on, this is bad. I keep messing with the signatures. HTTP test new request. So it accepts method as string, so that's gonna be post. It's gonna be target is going to be our endpoint target, and then the body. Okay, so we can just pick up the body, that's fine. Uh, so new request. So before that, we just need to define our body thing here. All right. So body is going to be a string. Okay, so let me just copy paste this thing here. All right, let me just change it to Google uh, Google Talk. I don't know what it's called. Let me name it USD, and that's just fine. All right, let me remove this. So that's our request body that we are going to send. It is going to be post. Okay, it is going to be against slash products endpoint. Okay, and it's going to be strings dot new reader, and that's going to be body. Okay, so because again, if you see HTTP test new request is actually the body is actually IO reader, so I need to get in the reader, right? So that's why. So having said that, now I also need to get this into request. Okay, so that's my request, and I need to also get my response. So that's going to be new recorder, and it doesn't take any argument. It just gives me the recorder object. Okay, I also need to declare my echo object. Okay, and as soon as you save it, make sure that you have the right echo, so that is from version 4. All right, and none of these are being used, but they will be used just very soon. So I have this e object, and using that I'm gonna create a new context. The new context takes request and response writer. Okay, so I have the request and I also have the response writer, right? So that's my request and response. Okay, and now I need to pass, I need to have the collection under handler assign the value of this collection that I created. Okay, and then I need to call, what is it? Yeah, now I actually need to invoke the function that is h dot create products. And I need to pass it my context here. All right, and it returns an error. Okay, so I'm gonna use the assert library here, but that's from testify. Okay, so when I do this, is error, I think, what is the error? Yeah, so I'm going to first of all assert that if there is no error. Okay, so that's going to be against this, and what is the signature? I keep losing the signature. So that is, it accepts t, it accepts error. Okay, and it accepts something else, which is fine. I'm not going to pass it. So let me delete this line and I'm just gonna take this out from here and insert it here. Okay, so that's gonna return a bool, right? So I'm gonna if this is an error, okay, or I think instead of doing this, I can do something like not nil or nil. All right, let me just do that. Edge create products C. Okay, and that's all I can check right now. Okay, it's not returning anything to me, so I'm just gonna save this and edge.create products is, so what is it saying? Not enough arguments. Okay, yeah, so I need to maybe separately call it. I can't put it here. And add this and all right. Mm, object nil testing. What is this? Undefined error. Okay. Okay, finally, it took a lot of time. So anyway, so I'm gonna run this test and it's supposed to create a document in our database right now. Okay, so fingers crossed, and it failed. So invalid memory reference. So I think I'm missing something here. So edge is supposed to be, let me see, it's at line 58. So 58 is this, all right? And how about this? Is it good now? It doesn't complain. So it wasn't supposed to be, it still fails though. So it supported unsupported media type. The response error is something else. But I think it's still working, right? So we are expecting this error to be nil, but it's something else right now. And I think it's because, okay, I think I found what the issue was. So basically when the data we are sending, we're not telling the server what type of data it is. Now we're sending the data is in JSON format, right? So we have to tell it, and that will be done using the request object here. So the request has this field called header. Header has this method called set, and what we want to do is we want to tell the server that the data we are sending is of JSON type. All right. Now the thing is that these are kind of hard-coded values, but you don't want to do that if you're using a framework. Usually your framework should be able to provide this. Okay, so what I'm going to do instead is, so I think content type. So if I look for content type, header content type. So this is kind of a const in Eco framework itself, and that is set to content type. So I can use it. And so that's going to be the header key, and the value is going to be, this time it's going to be application JSON. So application JSON is our application slash JSON const. All right, that's the value to it. So far I think it should be all good. And if we run it now, fingers crossed, it should just work. And it did. So if I come back to my database, I have Google Talk, the second document here, right? Our handler function is returning just one thing, and that is error. So all that we can check right now is asserting that it is nil. Okay, so that's all we want in our integration test, and that's fine. Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of things. We started from scratch and we built the post method. We added validators, middleware, and we also added the integration test. And now in the next session, we'll implement put, delete, and get methods and the same integration test for them as well. So I think now you get the gist of it, right? So you might want to try doing the other methods yourself, or you can wait for me to upload the next sessions on get, put and delete methods. Okay, so thanks for watching.